Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Caffeine TV. My name is Melissa Tosetti. I am the founder of The Savvy Life, and this is...
I'm Kevin Gibbons. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of The Savvy Life and one of our leading cash flow planners.
Oh, I like that sounds.
You
yeah,
like
that sounds very good.
My goal is to keep changing my title.
Your title each time.
To keep things exciting and interesting.
I think that's a good goal to have. So if you're joining us for the first time, and you may be wondering what The Savvy Life is, well, in addition to being the name of our business, what a Savvy Life is, it's this idea of creating a strong financial foundation while enjoying the journey. And doing that by just being very purposeful with how you spend your time and how you spend your money. So we talk a lot about how it's a philosophy, it's a way of living, but we really look at personal finance from a lifestyle perspective. So we teach a lot about money habits, good day-to-day money habits to have, but we also zero in on teaching smart spending in the various areas of our life to help increase our quality of life. Right?
So yeah, again, it's really just the whole concept of spending with intent. One of the things that the Savvy Life is about extreme frugality. We certainly do not advocate not spending money. Spending money is part of living. Spending money now so that you can enjoy today is part of living, and making sure that you have enough money for the future is part of living. So it really comes down to, as you said, the purposeful spending and the spending with intent, spending and saving with intent, and with goals in mind.
Yeah. So one of the things that we would love to talk with you about today is one of our favorite savvy money habits. There are actually 9 different habits that we teach to help people to implement a savvy life and to sustain a savvy life. And the one I want to talk about today, and I just want to be aware that Kevin is getting engulfed by the light coming into the window. It will pass in just a minute, but he is not being erased away from existence. Like my hand is being engulfed as well. I think we should turn this into a sci-fi personal finance.
We could possibly do this, yes.
I love that. We'll adjust ourselves if we need to in just a moment. But that being said, the money habit that we want to introduce you to today is one of my favorites, and we call it the Payday Habit. The Payday Habit is simply the habit of, on payday, go figure, you are going to sit down and you are going to pay all of your bills. Okay, so before spending any money on anything else, you're going to sit down and pay all your bills. The next piece of this habit is then on payday, or as close to payday as possible, you are also going to go out and you're going to fill your car with gas, or if you use mass transit, you're going to go out and buy your new mass transit pass. And then you're also going to go to the grocery store and buy your groceries. The beauty of this particular habit is if you're following savvy habit number 1, which is to pay yourself first, then you are having money, or you're setting money aside, you're saving money, so that's getting taken care of. You have paid all your bills, which are your financial obligations, and then you have gas to get to work, or some way to get to work, and then you've got groceries, you've got food for the table. Those are your financial needs. The money you have left over now is defined as money for you to enjoy. And what is so powerful about this particular philosophy or habit is that for most of us on any given day, we have no idea how much money we have available, because all the different ways that money moves in and out, it can be challenging to know how much can I spend without getting myself into trouble. This is the habit that allows you to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the keys is an aspect of self-consistency within what we do.
Mm-hmm.
When we do coaching for clients and create the spending plans are broken up into essential and lifestyle expenses. And so the essential expenses are just what you're talking about, taking care of right out of the gate. You're paying your mortgage, paying all your bills, paying your gas and food. So now you have a place to live, have a place to have a way to get to and from work, which is what's funding everything, and then you have food for the family. The nice thing about this is that you're secure that your essentials have been taken care of, and you can then determine how much money do I have to spend on the lifestyle aspects now? How much do I have to wait maybe for later? Most people get paid twice per month. It could be that your first month's paycheck goes to paying most of your essentials, paying most of your bills, and your second month's paycheck is used for most of your lifestyle expenses. That works with a lot of people. So that may mean that you may have to postpone some of the lifestyle activities until the second half of the month when that second paycheck hits. But you will be able to make those purchases with more confidence because you know that you have the money. And I think that's really the key, is just being able to spend and save when you know that you have the resources available.
So there's a consciousness around it and a purposefulness around it, and that shouldn't be a negative thing. That should actually be a very positive thing, to have that control.
Yeah, because you will actually be able to say, I can confidently make this purchase because I know that I have the money. I don't have to worry about, do I have an auto pay for a credit card or the utilities that's going to come in that's going to suddenly make my bank account go negative. You've taken care of that.
Yeah.
And so now you can make those decisions with a clear conscience, for lack of a better word.
Yep. Yeah. Do you want me to adjust the lights so you're not being absorbed by the?
It keeps getting higher and higher, so
Okay.
we should probably do something with it, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
One aspect of that too, I think, is in talking about currency, which is the fancy word for the different ways you spend money. Wow, you look so much better. Is that even if you're using a credit card, this habit is very powerful, because even if you're using a credit card, well, the goal is for you to be able to pay that credit card off at the end of each month, right? So if you're overspending on that credit card, well, how else are you gonna? This is how we get ourselves into trouble, right? And so, no matter what form of currency you're using, this is the habit that will help make sure that you stay on track.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it really is one of my favorites. It's because it's something you do. There's a trigger for it, which is payday, right? And so then you can implement the habit. And then the other aspect of it too is you have 3 big tasks in your week done.
Yeah.
Right. So that frees up your time as well.
I think another aspect that we don't really emphasize in our book or in our discussions, but I think it's an important one, is this concept of anticipation. Mm-hmm. If you can't make all your purchases immediately, or if you choose not to make all your purchases immediately so that you're managing your cash flow better, you can build a sense of anticipation for a lot of these discretionary lifestyle purchases. Mm-hmm. And that has an advantage in that it can increase the value of those purchases. If you're waiting to buy something and building up that anticipation, when you finally buy it, it may mean a little bit more than if you simply just do a one click on Amazon and get things right away.
Yeah, there's so much to say about that. Again, going back to all the different ways that we have the ability to spend money, it's very easy for us to spend more money than we maybe should, and so we're purchasing things maybe just because it catches our eye, it attracts us, versus us really wanting something. And we go back to the whole idea of living a savvy life, of being purposeful. When you really zero in and you decide on something that you really want to buy, again, you're going to, just like Kevin said, you're going to value it so much more. But ultimately, when every purchase that you make is like that, 6 months from now, a year from now, you're going to look around and you're only going to be surrounded by things that you just really do love, versus having to, it's garage sale time, start gathering the clutter, right? And then you're basically, for pennies on a dollar, giving away the stuff that you just randomly spent that may have prevented you from doing something you really wanted to do, like a vacation, whatever that might be. Yeah.
I think that's really key, and that's why we like this habit so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the other things that we wanted to talk with you about today is an article that I found, or that came to me. I subscribed to a newsletter, the Simple Dollar, and it's an article by Trent Ham. And the article is called The Destiny Trap. And it spoke to me. It is truly one of the best articles that I've read in a very long time on personal finance. And it's the idea that for so many of us, we feel like if we're bad about money, or we're in a negative financial situation, that Oh, it's just the way it is. It's, because of these other circumstances, so I just need to suck it up and deal with it and figure out how to just, muddle through. And that could not be further from the truth. He goes into a lot of really, really great detail. There is not a word that is superfluous in that article. It's a long article, but it's dense and it's content rich. And I say that because I actually really condensed it.
It takes a little bit of time to read, but it is time well spent.
Yeah, don't skim it, read it.
Yeah.
But there's a couple things that you actually really liked out of it.
Yeah, one of the things that I really liked is he really addresses what the emotional effects are, and that there's a lot of emotions tied into financial decisions and a lot of other decisions. And the comment that he made is that it can be incredibly difficult to control your emotions. Emotions happen viscerally. It's very hard to control that.
Viscerally is a good word.
What is possible for you to control is your action or reaction to those emotions. So something happens, I get angry. It's really, really difficult for me to get into the presence of mind to not feel angry. That's that's a core emotion that is going to happen. What I can control is how I react to that anger or how I react to any emotion. So if you find yourself in a situation about money where emotions are getting you off kilter, don't beat yourself up about feeling the way that you feel. What you can do is you can channel to what actions you should be accomplishing. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. The other point that he raised, and this goes back to kind of the whole crux of your summary of the article, is a lot of people think that things are happening that are out of their control. And one of their favorite things to do is to blame society, or the phrase he uses is blaming the man, government, big business, whoever is conspiring against you to keep you from accomplishing your goals. There are some things that are outside of your control, but there are a lot of things that you can control. And if you simply say, oh, the deck is stacked against me, the world is against me, I can't fight City Hall, you're abdicating your own responsibility and ability to act. And I think that is one thing that he really stresses as, no, that is not the right way to think about these things. Even in those cases when things are happening outside of your control, the correct answer, the correct response is, okay, this is outside of my control, but what is inside of my control that I can do to better my situation? One example that I've thought about and I've seen is, if your company has a reduction in force and has layoffs, that might be outside of your control. Hi, Jeff. That might be outside of your control. But what you can do is make sure that you are valued within your company so that at least you're not in the first stream of the reduction of force people. You can make sure that if you're in an industry where that is a possibility, your resume is kept up to date. You're taking company-funded classes whenever possible. You have a good presence on LinkedIn, so there's a professional social network that you can use to go find another job. There are things that you can do. So there are things that are outside of your control. You can't do anything about those. Don't worry about those. But take a look at what you can do in response to those things to better your situation.
So we've been talking about this article a lot today, and one of the things I didn't think about until just now is when you think that being bad about money is your destiny, you stop looking for alternatives.
Right.
The thing is that you're going to see the walls because that's what you're looking for. And if you can shift it, that's a huge part. Instead of looking for the walls, what are the opportunities?
Yeah,
and that's
where's that window?
Yeah, that's not a necessarily easy thing to do because you're having to kind of shift your belief system. People do it every day. It's not to say that that's not possible. And it's a funny thing because I have I'm just a naturally, I joke around that I have Pollyanna syndrome. For most things, I can almost always see a positive aspect of that particular situation. My reticular activating system just finds it naturally. And it's funny because I will be sitting next to somebody and we're having the exact same experience, and they're, moaning and groaning, and I'm like, oh, well, at least there's this.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way that and it's not from a sense of silliness, or how I'm trying to describe it. It's not from a fluffy unicorns and rainbows kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just that's the way that I am able to get to the next level that I want to. How am I going to learn from this? What can I get out of this? Where's the opportunity then if this door closed?
It can be challenging to do that, but if you want to be in control of your life, and this specifically was applying to financial acumen and managing money, and how do I break myself of the bad habits of getting out of debt and all these other things. But it goes all across life. It's just the idea that you really have to look at any challenge or adversity as the opportunity of, there's got to be some way for me to get around here and find the value and make the improvement on my life. There has to be some way to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really key point. One of the other points that he made in the article that you really liked was the whole concept of who you surround yourself with.
It's every person in the success industry, any person writing articles on how do you improve yourself, will tell you that you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And it's a matter of looking around, and the people that you're hanging out with, are they where you want to be at the next level? And it's not from a perspective of, you should ditch your friends because they're bad influences. That's not the idea of it at all. But it's the idea that an example might be that you may want to make some changes in your financial life, but all your friends are going out on a regular basis and they're spending money here and spending money there, and you may want to make some changes around that, but you're seeing how they're spending, and so then you start kind of second guessing yourself, or you're getting influenced and going along, and then that is delaying you being able to get to your particular financial goals. We call that social spending, other people spending your money for you. And then this can be very, very challenging, I will fully admit, but there are just little things that you can help. Jeff says, order to remain in the circle, you'll have to spend like that.
Exactly.
That's very true.
Exactly.
That's very true.
If you get trapped in there to where you're keeping up with your friends to remain in the circle, that may not be where you want to spend your money, and you have to figure out how to gently extricate yourself from that situation and concentrate on what you want to do. One way to look at this, and the other problem, or the other concern about this, is who is around you has a significant influence on how you feel about what you're doing. Yeah. For instance, if you're hanging out with a group of friends and they're all overspending by 50%, they're racking up bills, and you can see that they're getting into debt. They're your friends. You know how much money they make, and they're spending beyond their means. And they're spending 50% more than they're making, and you're spending 10% more than you're making. You're going to look around and go, "Wow, by comparison, I'm doing pretty well." Yeah, not really.
But
you're still spending too much. All right.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself around friends who are spending significantly less than they make, and you're on the high end, you're going to be influenced and go, "I really need to get on my act around here." We're very strongly influenced by the people that we surround ourselves.
They create our norm.
They create our norm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so one of the key things for this type of destiny feeling of where, it's my destiny, is if you surround yourself with people who think like you want to behave and behave like you want to behave, that will help influence and encourage you to behave that way. Mm-hmm. When I was in the tech industry, one of my philosophies was I always wanted to be surrounded by people who were smarter and more experienced than me. And so as I progressed at each job, when I looked around and realized that I was the senior technical person at the company, that was the sign for me to leave. That was the time for me to go find another job where I could be more junior and learn more from people who knew more and had more experience. And I did that throughout my entire career, and it was really a great way to keep improving. And just, you don't get cocky, you don't rest on your laurels, you're always improving. For this type of activity of living a sound financial life, surround yourself by the people that you want to be like.
And we're not saying ditch your friends, but by any sense of the word. What we are saying is that, just be aware of your comparisons to them, right? You don't need to drive the same car as they do if that is going to derail you from what your particular financial goals are, or whatever that might look like. But what we are saying is perhaps you are saying no a little bit more to different social engagements that again are going to throw you off track. That's okay. You don't have to participate in everything. It's again something that I learned. It took me a long time to learn. The other thing though is searching around you for people that are like-minded. Prior to being my BS life, my before savvy life, one of the things that actually influenced my desire to actually create this business goes back to 20 plus years ago when I worked in high-tech public relations here in Silicon Valley. The public relations is called the pink collar industry because it's very female oriented or dominated. And I worked with a lot of super smart women that somehow, some way were making a similar income as me, and yet they could afford to get their nails done all the time, to have like these great streaks in their hair. They were always wearing new outfits, walking in the door with new outfits. Everybody looked very similar. And they were going to, Vegas on the weekends. And I kept thinking, how are they doing this? Yeah. How are they doing this? I'm replacing a top. I'm not buying a new top. I'm replacing something that's threadbare, right? And what I started to realize is that they actually couldn't afford to do those things. So it took me about a year before I started to realize they all had massive credit card debt. And that was the point when I was still working 2 jobs to pay down my debt. So that was part of the reason, is that I didn't have credit card availability. I wasn't using my cards. So that was a piece of it. But a very important person came into my life at that time. There was a woman, her name is Jessica. She still lives here in Silicon Valley. She's still in public relations, has her own business, not at all surprised. But Jessica came in, she was a couple of years younger than me and all of us. And first of all, she did not dress like everybody else. She had such fantastic style, but it was all her own. And every single time I asked her where she got her clothes, she always named some thrift store somewhere here in the Bay Area. She was very mindful, was very good with her money, and she just had this kind of calm presence. And that was another aspect of how I suddenly realized that everybody else was in debt. There was like an energy around them that was only palpable in comparison to her. So that was a huge lesson learned. But I started to just hang out with Jessica, not to the exclusion of everybody else, but I wanted to learn from her. And it was not at all surprising that within just a couple of years, she went out at the height of the dot-com boom and was able to buy a house in San Francisco. She was probably only like 26 at the time, where the rest of us were older than her and still scrambling, renting the properties that we lived in. And the whole story is that I wanted to be like Jessica. And pretty soon from that lesson, it was like, well, that person seems to really know a lot about money, or that person is cooking a lot at home and always talking, bringing in these great leftovers and stuff. And I just systematically started spending time with these people that I wanted to be more like them and pull aspects of their life. And here we are. Yeah.
So, again, what was the main excitement of this article that we read is the thing that don't feel that you're trapped by destiny into your life, into your habits. You really do have control. And we know that everybody has different situations, and not everybody has the same set of opportunities, but you all have some aspect of control of your life. If you look at what you can control, make those changes. If everything you do improves your life a little bit, then you're just compounding those things and you're moving in the right direction. So don't fall into that destiny trap, because you do have the control to change all those things.
Yeah, and build on those little baby steps. It is amazing how every day you can do one little thing that when you look back, you're going to realize everything that you built on. I can't think of any, well, I shouldn't say that because I just expressed one, but there's very few days that I look back and go, wow, that was the day that everything, changed. It was all built on. And I think actually that's what martial arts taught me. I just had to walk in the door and do that workout, and then the next day I had to do the same thing. And it was the culmination that got the experience that I had with that. Yeah.
There's one other thing that I want to talk about. I think that over the past 15, 20 years, the government, employers, and financial advisors have been pretty adamant about the whole idea of, about saving for retirement, having a 401k or some type of that. I think people at least understand the concept of saving for that long-term goal. What I want to talk about is saving for those midterm goals. So if you're, 25, 30 years old, you're putting money away for a 401k, that's money that you're going to see in 30, maybe 40 years. So that's very good. You're saving for that, you have that squared away. But there are financial goals that we have all throughout our life. There's different milestones that we have. I want to start a family. I want to have a house. I want to get a nice car. I want to have vacation property. Whatever you want to do. I want to get into a position where I'm not working 6 days a week. I'm only working 3 days a week, and I get to go do this traveling. How do you save for those intermediary goals? And the real key on that is making sure that they're focused and well-defined. If you just say, well, it's a good idea that I should save money, I'm just going to put money into a savings account because I should save it. That's not a good way to get success. Some people can do that, but you're a lot better off if you can allocate that money to a specific goal. In 10 years, I want to go buy this house here. Now I know how much money I need for a down payment. I have a timeline, so now I have a goal that I'm working for, and I have that carrot well defined to where I'm going to reach that and I'm going to get something for it. So as I'm transferring that money and maybe doing without some luxury, I can see what that goal is. And I think that's something that we need to incorporate more into our lives. I think we've gotten very good about incorporating the whole retirement long-term life investment, but I think that we need to be thinking as well. All of our money should be working for us in one way or another. We're either buying things that we need/want right now, or we're saving for things that we need/want in the future. And if you're very purposeful and directed in how you save and spend, you'll make sure that you will be achieving those goals.
I'd like to add just one thing to that, though. When you say that you want to achieve something 10 years from now, it can't just always be 10 years from now, because 10 years from now never comes.
Yes.
You have to define
Yep.
on January 31st, 2029 is when I'm going to have the keys in my hand to my new house, or whatever that goal might be. Absolutely. It is. We've just had the experience with hearing friends over the years always say, "Oh yeah, next year I want to do this next," and then 15 years later, they're still not achieving it, and that's to some extent. It's not necessarily their fault. It's that they just have the wrong time. Their timeline isn't definitive. Defined.
Again, it comes back to what you're controlling, and one of the things that in order to be truly successful in this type of activity, you need to have very clearly defined objectives. And part of the objective is, what do I want? When do I want it? And how am I going to get there? All right, and you need all of those, because if I say, I want to buy a new, I enjoy motorcycles. I want to buy a new motorcycle in 2025, and I figure it's going to cost, let's splurge. It's going to cost $25,000 for a motorcycle. Well, that's a good start, but now I better figure out how much money I need to save every month so that I'm not trying to come up with $22,000 in 6 months. So you have to have all three of those components. And if you do, it becomes very methodical, and it becomes the habit that we're talking about. Every paycheck, I'm going to put this amount of money away for this goal, and then it becomes so much more manageable. You don't have to think about it.
So I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and habit I've gotten into recently stems from a client that said a line a couple of years ago that cracked me up, which was, my past self screwed my future self. And ever since then, and I've been using it more and more recently, is that I will talk about my past self and my future self, and my future self or my present self will thank my past self for something that I did that lined me up for that amount of time. And every time I do that, I get a little Doctor Who kind of like time travel.
But it's a very good point. And again, sometimes the obvious just needs to be stated, is that yes, the decisions you make today are going to affect your life tomorrow. And so make good decisions. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
And think about them.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to do, we've got a couple more minutes before we have to wrap up. I promised on social media that I would talk about the 2 books that initially influenced this idea of living a savvy life. This idea, again, for those of you that may have just joined us, living a savvy life, the best way to describe it is it's about creating a strong financial foundation while you enjoy the journey, and doing that by being purposeful with how you spend your time and how you spend your money. And I talk a lot about the hot mess that was my life BS before Savvy, and just desperately searching for money skills, realizing after a very long time that I didn't have money skills, so searching for what those day-to-day money skills might look like. But then also realizing, I have the money skills, but it just feels so, what's the word I'm looking for? Like black and white. There's no
almost
color.
Antiseptic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Antiseptic is a perfect word. Like, where's the color? Where do you live life in this spreadsheet, right? And so that right there was that was the blooming of this idea of the financial foundation, like building that financial foundation for the future, but how do you enjoy right now? So the first aspect of it came from a book many of you might be aware of called The Millionaire Next Door. And I wish I had a copy to show you, but I lent mine out and didn't think about it until I was preparing for this particular session. But The Millionaire Next Door, what I love about it is that it describes that the millionaire, an actual millionaire, someone who actually has $1 million in the bank, is probably not the guy with the Ferrari or the woman with the Ferrari parked in front of the house that is, the big mega mansion. The person that is the millionaire is the person that is living in a house and has been living in the house for 15, 20 years. They're driving a 5 to 8 year old car, so they don't have a car payment anymore, and they just have some subdued spending habits. So they're not uber frugal. They just are very purposeful with where they're spending. And it further defines that it's quite likely that the person with the Ferrari doesn't actually own the Ferrari. They're probably leasing it, and they probably don't even own the mansion.
Yeah.
A lot of that demonstration of wealth is not actual wealth. There are people, yes, absolutely, that can afford those things, but so often that is not the case. And so that to me was like, oh, wealth, it's not hitting the lottery. It's that buildup of time, right? And having those really good habits. So I strongly encourage you, go and pick up a copy. It's very data centric, meaning that it's not so much a storytelling book, but it's worth reading. And if you want just kind of a quick summary, you can of course go onto Google and look for a summary of it. But I do think it's worth adding to your library. I'm very picky about what books actually get put on I'm pointing at my bookcases. The other book that really heavily influenced the creation of the Savvy Life is this book right here, which I will never lend out. Sorry, here, over here. It's called Entre Nous, The Woman's Guide to Finding Her Inner French Girl. The author is Deborah Olivier. So Deborah is an American woman. I think she's actually from Southern California. And she married a French man and moved to France and lived there for 8-10 years. And the book came from her experience of shock at the differences in the way that the French women specifically, but European women live and the way that Americans live. How we are consumers by nature, where in France it's very much savvy living. They're very purposeful. They have a small wardrobe. Quality over quantity. They buy the best that they can afford, and they take care of what they have to make it last as long as possible. The same thing with food, quality over quantity, where we are, cheaper the better, and I'm generalizing to a great degree. And I am also, by the way, a very proud American, so I'm not bashing Americans. It's just culturally there are some things we can learn from our European brethren. And so this is the book that gave me the color to the anesthetic. Anesthetic? That's not the right word.
Antiseptic.
Anesthetic. Anesthetic is the fun stuff. Of you've got the right money habits. Now here's how you spend smart. And it's that focus of purposefulness, planning ahead. What do you want life to look like? And so those are the 2 books I promised to tell you about. You get a bonus book today because I felt the need to show you physically 2 copies of a book. The other book that later influenced this idea of living a savvy life is this one here, French Women Don't Get Fat, which may seem like a really funny book to talk about in a personal finance conversation. But when we were heavily shopping our manuscript for Living the Savvy Life, also I've got that here that I can show you. Right,
This is our book.
This is our book, Living the Savvy Life. When I was shopping that around, my tagline to publishers was that we wrote, French women don't get fat, but for money. And again, it's the same idea of, look, you can live a rich life, you can really enjoy it, but you've just got to pick and choose what it's going to be, because if you're trying to spend on everything, like you're trying to eat everything, you are not going to you're just not going to succeed. Yeah, exactly. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest, I don't want to say challenges, but I try to be very careful in spending time when I'm talking with clients, we're writing articles, whatever communication we're doing, is to really get them to understand that this really is about increasing your quality of life through purposefulness, not about frugality, not about not spending. It's not the case at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if we want to summarize what we talked about today, even if you feel like you're overwhelmed, remember that you always have some element of control. Mm-hmm. Don't succumb to the myth of financial destiny.
Exactly. Yeah. And please read that. By the way, again, that article is The Destiny Trap by Trent Ham on The Simple Dollar. And there's links to it on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Yeah. Realize that the savvy life is learning how to control your finances, how to manage your finances from a lifestyle perspective. It's the 2 components there. We want to make sure we understand what we're doing with our money, and we want to have the lifestyle that we want to have.
Yep, exactly. Right. And with that, we've got to go because we've got a client meeting. But we do want to tell you that our next session on Caffeine TV is going to be at
Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day at 12 o'clock. So in full disclosure, we did a second show today. We had some technical difficulties with the recording of the previous episode, so that's why we did this.
So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll see you at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And then the other thing, just real quick before we go, if you are looking for more information about savvy living, we've got articles bleeding out of our ears. Yeah, exactly. So every week we publish an article or a blog post on our website, thesavvylife.com. There's tons of information in there. I'd like to say there's great articles that we have poured our heart into writing. And so if you go to thesavvylife.com, you'll see where our blog posts are, where our articles are. You can also sign up for the list.
Which is a weekly email that we send out. It will include links to those articles, and it will also give you an assignment of 2 or 3 activities that usually tie into the lead article of things that you can do to better control your finances and to lead a savvy life. This newsletter is free. All you do is just subscribe to it, and you get on an email mailing list, and we'll send it to you every week.
Yeah, to sign up, you just need to go to our homepage, thesavvylife.com. You see a little video of me. And sign up from there. All right? We good?
I think so.
All right.
Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.